Good afternoon or evening, wherever you are. And hello, welcome all of you to another session of the European Showrunner Think Tank, in which we explore and discuss the advantages and the challenges of showrunning in Europe. My name is Marieke Musselaars. In my, real life, I work at a Benelux production and distribution company called Lumière. But today I will be your humble moderator, and I am extremely excited to welcome to this session showrunner Chris Chibnall, who we all know from, for example, Broadchurch and Doctor Who. Chris, welcome.
Hello, I'm your humble panelist.
Yes, hello, humble panelist. Are you joining us from London?
I'm joining you from Bridport in Dorset, which is where I live, which is about a mile from the beach where we filmed Broadchurch.
And actually, is the painting behind you? That is the Broadchurch beach, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It was a gift, and it sort of hovers over me.
Fantastic. Well, we'll hear a lot about Broadchurch later on, I think.
Yeah.
But first, let me say a few more words about this session. First of all, this panel is part of the, as I said, European Showrunner Think Tank, which is part of the European Showrunner Programme, organized by the IFS Internationale Filmschule Köln, Cologne. It is funded by Creative Europe and the Film and Media Fund NRW. It's also supported by industry partner Netflix. Also, the European Showrunner Programme is actually starting next week again with 12 exciting participants from all over Europe that are all aspiring to be showrunners. And I hope they're all tuning in right now. Then good to know there's a Q&A function. You can all put in your questions. I will try and let Chris answer them all. If it's relevant for the discussion that we're having at that moment, then I will throw in the question straight away. If I don't do that, not to worry, then hopefully by the end, the last 15 minutes, I will still be able to ask your question. Hope that's all okay. Chris, shall we get started?
Let's do it.
Perfect. So in our little introduction, in the statements on the event, etc., I think we introduced you as a pioneer of showrunning in the UK.
Okay, well, those are your words, not mine. There's quite a few of us, but it's been a slow rise in the number of showrunners in the past, I guess, 2 decades, really, maybe even slightly less.
Okay, but I would love for you to take me back to this kind of at least pioneer moment for yourself. So when you kind of made the transition from writer to showrunner, tell us about that.
Well, I suppose there's not one moment. It happened slowly. So
gradually.
I was really lucky. I had the first show I did for the BBC, which was a show called Born and Bred. I was really fortunate in that show ran for 4 seasons, and it was the first show I'd written. It got picked up, and across the seasons, I had very supportive producers who included me in the production process. Obviously, right. That's not a given. As a writer starting, and that's one of the conversations I'm sure we'll have.
Yeah.
But they were great at saying, you should be in these discussions, you should be in the discussions with directors, you should be in discussions with designers, and then gradually in post-production. And so what they had a great open door policy of letting me be around lots of the decision making.
You got a traineeship.
Yeah, it was a traineeship, and then across the seasons it became more and more because I could contribute a little bit more. I understood a bit more. I was learning on the job. So that was, and I come from in my 20s when I was trying to become a professional writer. I did things like administration in theatre companies, touring bookings, all kinds of stuff. So I had those sort of 2 parts of my brain anyway. So yeah, it sort of started there, and then gradually. So after that, each time I was on a show, the more that I could do just to be around and see how all sides of the process worked. And it didn't happen on every show, but it did more and more. And then when I was asked to do Torchwood, which was the Doctor Who spin-off that Russell T Davies created,
yes.
They asked me to come on board as I think a co-producer on that.
Writer / co-producer.
Yeah, because it was very unclear what was going to happen with that show. He was showrunning Doctor Who at the same time as the and so I did that. I was obviously part of a lot of the processes on that. The second season, I was even more involved in that process. And then after that, I got my own first sort of solo showrunning job, which was doing the UK version of Law and Order UK for Dick Wolf. And from then on, really, that's when I started. It became part of everything I did, and I was an executive producer on pretty much everything from.
And you started calling yourself a showrunner as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult title in a way, isn't it? Because it's not true. And actually, that's part of obviously what we'll talk about. It's
not true. You mean running the show is not true, or
not running the show, because the show is a massive load of cogs in a huge machine, and you're not doing that, but you are. So the executive producer credit is the one I most feel comfortable with.
Executive producer,
yeah, but it's become a shorthand within the industry. It's not like people get credited as showrunner. It's the credits on the show, so it's really just a shorthand, and it's both really useful and also. You just have to be careful around it, because it's any TV show, as as everyone on this call knows, is just an absolute collaboration, a huge team effort. You're talking about 50, 100, 150 people, maybe more, just to get a show done. So it feels a little invidious to have that title.
That's very humble of you.
I think it's very accurate,
However, there is this one creative leader, right? So we've been on these think tanks, we've been trying to indeed come up with a definition of the word showrunner. There's plenty of them out there. There's also plenty of different approaches. What would be your definition?
Well, I guess, and it's funny because I run a showrunner program with my company in the UK, and it was one of the first questions we asked and tried to define this, and it took us, quite a few goes with lots of people at a whiteboard. But I think really it's the person who has overall creative control and veto, and sets the artistic vision for the show, the artistic or editorial vision for the show, and then works with producing partners, heads of department, the whole team on the production, stakeholders such as studios, broadcasters, streamers, to deliver the show on time, on schedule, on budget, but to deliver the vision that has been, you're curating the vision that everyone has bought into.
I like that, curator. I haven't heard that much yet. It's indeed a creative leader, but indeed curating the vision.
I think that's the best one. That's my favorite word around showrunning, because you're not doing the work. You're not designing the costumes or the sets, and you're not editing it yourself, unless you're a writer, director, producer, editor. You are expressing what you think the vision of the show is, and then curating decisions, or just, and sometimes when you talk about curating, that's really a yes or a no. Is it? I mean, because your heads of departments will be coming to you with questions. Is it this or is it this? Does it look like that? Should it sound like that? And often it's a yes or a no, and then, reasons for that. But you're really, so it is very curatorial, because you are essentially, you're the reference point for all of the people working on the show, because you've started with the vision for the show, and hopefully you've defined the vision of the show. So as you go through, you're really just a show is one long conversation about what show are we making and how do we get there.
I really want to get to kind of the core, like the nitty-gritty of all of this. Like, give me in the next half an hour a step by step.
Right. So, well, half an hour monologue.
No, I mean, no, but it's definitely, I think it is what we all want to know. It is basically how you as a showrunner work. We want to learn from that. And like I said, there's plenty of other approaches around, especially in Europe, where we're just getting started with this whole showrunner approach. So I think that is really what we want to focus on. You have that first creative vision, you have that idea. Then what? What happens?
So I guess if we're talking about, because there's two ways, even there you see there's two ways, because it might be your own original idea, or somebody may have come to you with an established series or an idea or a piece of IP or whatever. But let's go with
because you have Broadchurch and Doctor Who, which are two perfect examples, I guess.
Both. And in the sense that the process doesn't really differ. So I guess what you're doing, if you're starting, when you say an idea, so we're starting with a kernel of an idea, no script, anything like that. I think the first thing, and this is going to be the biggest decision you make, is if you have an idea, it's like, who do you want to be your producing partner now? And that's the biggest decision, because I guess every showrunner, and again, this isn't, so I'll talk about how I've worked and how it tends to work in the UK, and even in the UK there's a number of different roles, it's a number of different setups. It's
no worries, we'll just talk about your approach. Indeed, yes. So producing partner,
producing partner is the key thing. Partner is the key person. So you're looking for, because in a sense, if the showrunner is the editorial creative curator, then I think that the producing part of the non-writing executive producer, let's call them,
writing and the non-writing executive producers,
is the other half of the equation, just as important. And the person or company who are going to be responsible for the operational, logistical, administrative, all that kind of the non-editorial stuff. They'll still have input into editorial and creative, but what you're looking for is a partner who kind of can take care of all of that stuff and work with you on the editorial as well. So that you have a
for specifically in a partner.
I think it depends on the project. So, but I think you have, so first of all, somebody whose work you like, somebody who's worked on shows or produced shows that you enjoy, somebody who shares your values of working and how you want to work, because how you work is as important as a showrunner as the work you do. So that means the tone of working, how you treat people, what sort of working processes you have, how you want to set up your teams, how you work with teams, the way it's everything. So the really intrinsic values. So it's a very important part of that.
And you talked about veto earlier. When it comes to finding your producing partner, I mean, will you still have veto when it comes to?
I think it's interesting, and I'm a bit more hesitant about using the word veto than perhaps at the start, because in this idea of everything being a conversation, hopefully you never really get to the point where anybody needs to exercise a veto, because you're hopefully going along a path where you feel like we're all trying to make the same show, we all know what we're making, and we're all trying to find the common ground of decisions to get us there. So in terms of vetoes, it's very rare that you actually use a veto generally if things are going well. And I can think of 2, 3, 4 times where I've sort of categorically had to go, no on something, maybe across 10 or 15 years of execing, because hopefully before you get there, you've had conversations and you've listened to other people's points of view, they've listened to yours, you've found like a middle ground or a compromise or an alternative solution, or one has come round to the other person's way of thinking. So that's where it becomes about everything in filmmaking, everything in showrunning is a conversation. But to your point about veto, what you do need at the start is an understanding of, if there is disagreement, who gets the final say,
right?
And that will that is going to depend on how the show is set up and who's, if is it your idea? Is it the company's idea? Does the broadcaster or streamer have final say? Ideally, as the showrunner, you should have final artistic, creative say, but obviously that is subject to all of the considerations that you're working with: budget, schedule, the broadcaster's opinion, and in the end, they're paying for it, and they will have the final say. But
about all these stakeholders. So I mean, as a showrunner, you work indeed with all of them.
Yeah.
I suppose they all give you notes.
Yeah. You would expect them to.
Yes.
Anybody who's paying any money for the production is allowed to give you notes.
Yes. Is it your final say on how to incorporate these notes?
Generally, what happens is the process will often be, and part of this is how you set things up and how you manage things. I guess there's two different types of notes across the whole production. First of all, there's the script process, and then there's the production process, really. So if we talk about scripts, so is the first.
But we're still in the script phase, yes.
Yeah, so in the script phase, but in the UK we have script editors, which isn't a role that exists everywhere in the world, but is really a fantastically important role, I think. Script editors, script executives, script producers, whatever you want to call them, really, really important to the writer. I find them really the best thing you can have is a great script exec or a great development exec, or a great script editor. Really, really crucial. And part of their role is often to corral all of the notes from the various stakeholders. So it might be from your co-executive producer, the producer maybe who's come on board and has got the logistics. You might have a director doing that. The script team or the script executive themselves will have big notes because hopefully they're sharing that vision. And then you might have a head of production company or studio and your ultimate broadcaster or streamer. And what I tend to like is that all of those notes go to one place, so they will go to the script editor. And what I often ask is they all go into one document, or we all have one meeting, but I like to know who's giving what note, because often, so sometimes if it's a written set of notes, I'll go, okay, can we have the initials next to the notes? Because I think sometimes then you can figure out what might be behind the note in a good way. Because sometimes people are giving notes where you're thinking, I don't think that's quite what's bothering you, but I understand that there's something around there.
Yes.
Yeah, and it might be with a if it's a line producer giving a note, it might be, do we need this big battle sequence? And you go, well, that's clearly a budget note that they're worried about with that, but I think we do need that sequence, but it might be there are two other sequences later on that we can trim back because, if we need to save money, but I feel like this sequence is really important. That won't necessarily be in the notes. So you have you're always kind of trying to go, what's the impulse, what's the intent of the note, as well as what's the note. So yes, you need a process, and people need to be clear about who can give notes and who can't as well, and as few people giving notes as possible.
Yes.
Is the aim. I worked on one show where there were 14 people giving notes on scripts, and it just, surprisingly, the show didn't turn out as we all wanted it to, because there was no organization, so yeah.
So why you wanted to be a showrunner?
Yeah. I mean, it's it's you have to be able to have those conversations at the beginning and go, this doesn't work, and that doesn't help. So I mean,
input.
Yeah.
I suppose you have then already created somewhat, to maintain a creative vision, somewhat of a mission statement for a show.
Yeah, I think if you're doing so let's say you've I don't know, you've pitched your idea and you've written a script, then to get it sold, normally you would have some kind of sales document or Bible or whatever it is. Can be anything from 1 page to 50 pages, might lay out the whole season, might just lay out your kind of overall vision and tone for the show. But I think whatever you are selling, whatever you are putting in that document, is the thing that then they are buying, and that is the thing you have to make, because those are the conversations. Obviously that can evolve and develop and deepen and have layers, but you kind of continually have to be sure that the thing you have pitched, and this applies again if you're coming to work on an existing piece of IP where you go, here is my vision for how we deal with this, here is my vision for the next seasons of this show or whatever, or this version of this show in this country, something like Law and Order. You have to be super clear about that, and then if everybody's bought into that, then you have to be really clear and definite about delivering that version. You don't then get to move away from that or get bored with that. It's very clear. And
I think as a showrunner, that is crucial, isn't it? That you can always go back to that mission statement.
And I think so. What I also tend to do, trying to do, particularly if we're going into production, is if you can reduce the idea, because everybody will have read the script, everybody knows what's going on in detail, but if you have a sense for the series overall, or the piece you're making, that you can reduce into a sentence or two, it's incredibly useful. And I was taught this a long time ago by brilliant US showrunners, Ricky Manning and Rodney O'Bannon. But talking about the nuclear core rod of your idea, what is it? How do you express it? So, for example, with Broadchurch, the really simple thing we talked about on the production all the time is a terrible thing in a beautiful place.
That's it.
So, that was it, and it's a really earth-shattering emotional event that happens in an incredibly idyllic landscape. And because at the beginning, people were reading that script and going, oh, so there'll be lots of rain and cloud and really moody. And I was like, no, it lives in the dissonance. It's, that's what gives it its voice, I think. So it's really important to express that idea. And I think if you're continually doing that, you'd be surprised how far that takes you into the production all the way through, that you're continually saying, so that can apply to production design, it can apply to costume, hair and makeup, it can apply to score. Do
you have an example,
cinematography,
like Broadchurch or something where?
Well, I think with something like in Broadchurch, I would think about Olivia Colman, who played Ellie. She had a big orange coat that became recognizable.
It was iconic.
Great. But that was absolutely Ray Holman, our amazing costume designer, who also did all the costumes on Doctor Who when we were on it. Absolutely kind of came out, and it enables him to make that decision of, she's not wearing something grey or dour or beige. It's got a life to it. It's got an energy. It reflects the landscape that we talked about. Terrible thing, beautiful place the palette became oranges, teals, the sand, the sea, the sky. And if you look at her coat, that expresses this bright orange sun to represent sort of, I don't know, the warmth of that character. So you're continually, under that. It would have been really easy if you're not talking about these things, then you go, well, what coat is she wearing? It could easily be a cold blue or like I say, something steely grey.
Grain, yeah.
So you're hopefully finding something that just identifies the unique pathway that you're on, so that all your heads of departments, who you're in constant conversation with, but they have a sense of the trajectory and a sense of what gives this show its identity. What project are you making together? Because it's like the show exists in the distance and everybody's looking to the horizon. And really, as a showrunner, what you're doing is you're kind of the person at the front going, it's definitely this way. So follow me. And they're all coming, but you're going, every decision is another step on the pathway to the show that exists out there. Yes. And you're giving clues to people, but also you're receiving stuff. So and hopefully you're getting confirmation that the vision that you've talked about is going to come to life and work, because everything is just one big collective. So that sentence hopefully applies equally to everyone working on the show, and they can use it. It's not to say it's the only thing you ever say. You just go around the whole building on set, just go, is it a terrible thing to use for place? It's not that at all, but I think it becomes a kind of the beacon at the front that you're hopefully carrying aloft.
So mission statement, the core, really important. Then
Yeah.
You mentioned how important people are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose you're involved in the hiring process of all the heads of departments.
Yeah.
Are there any policies in place for you? What do you look for? Like, can you tell us something about that process as a showrunner?
Yeah, because we were building a business from the start. So, you know, every show is a startup business. And so you need to understand what your policies are in terms of the type of people you want, but you also need to understand what, in terms of the sort of characters and qualities of the people you want. You also need to set your rules and policies for inclusion, diversity, and equality of employment and opportunity. So the
whole cast and crew.
Yeah, you need to be very clear about what you're doing, and you need to be pointing people in the right direction. It starts so early, and that's incredibly important to have those conversations early to set the policy for the show. And really, but yes, then you're really, again, you are, as with your very first partnership with your non-writing executive producer, you're really looking for people whose work you really admire.
Yeah, again.
And people you want to spend time with and be in a room with, and people who can challenge you creatively, people who you think are going to be enjoyable to work, people who understand, who are also illuminating your work at you, showing you things maybe you hadn't seen. You know, you're really just looking for a load of geniuses who are smarter than you, and then you're looking to put them all together and get out of their way. That's the ideal setup for a showrunner. But I also think with the heads of departments and your executive producer and your producer, and obviously directors as well,
yes,
I think what you really need, and the thing you have to drill down into, is to understand that, and it sounds so basic, but it's really important, is that they have the same standards as you, that they will work as hard, that they will be as detailed, that they will be as dedicated as you are as well, you know, and that, because otherwise you can really come unstuck, where if there's just one person who's slightly 10% less bothered than other people, it's like you want to have a team that all have the same standards and are all aspiring to the same thing. So it's not just what, but it's like the level of how you do it, and the dedication. That doesn't necessarily mean working till 2 a.m. It's just, and it shouldn't mean that when you don't have to. But it's the are you all seeing the same show in your minds? You know, and that's obviously, you're not a mind reader, so you have to tease that out through conversations early on, and references. The other thing is, it's really important to do your due diligence, as you would in any business.
Yes.
Call the people who've worked with them before. You know, you watch the work, obviously, but then it's ringing the people or emailing the people who have worked with them before and just saying, how was that experience and what are they like? And you build a picture.
Yeah, it's like starting a company, indeed. It's like a startup.
It's exactly that, because and you're doing it really fast. It's like a load of people really fast, because it's, you know, to build a company, if you start any other company that you start up and you've got 150 people working together within 8 weeks, you know, it's just like, that's an extreme. It's madness. You know, I thought with a budget of anything from, you know, whatever, if on a low budget thing like 2 or 3 million up to 50 or 100 million, you know, on some of the
think about that, Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, it's you have to do those things, and obviously, you know, the more leadership management training you can do, or there's obviously at no end of incredible books that you can read on that, and people that you can watch online, but it's understanding what your leadership style is, and that whether you're a dictator and it's just everything you say goes, or you're much more of a team leader where you're trying to move the whole team towards something and using everybody else's expertise.
And how do you, as a showrunner, because suddenly you have all those people, right? How do you approach development and pre-production phase as a showrunner, with meetings with all the head of departments, etc.?
Really structured, I think.
Yeah.
As many conversations with as you can. I think generally what we've tended to do is you will have the most important thing is like the first tone meeting. So the tone meeting that we would normally do would be all of the heads of departments, including those including like cinematographer, and then including post-production, if you know who your editor is, if you know who your composer is, your colorist. You have a sort of a tone meeting for the series overall, just go, and again, where you're in a massive room, everybody has the script, everybody's brought with them their ideas for the show. So location, photos for possibilities, film, might be film still references from the director and director of photography, costume samples, all kinds of lookbooks, and then if you've got visual effects, that company can come along and go, okay, here is it's this kind of stuff that we're looking at. So all of that stuff, so that you get in one room, and it's probably an all day, if not a couple of days, depending on how many scripts, whether you've got everything at the start, and you just go, here's the whole series. But I think just a series tone meeting going, this is what we're trying to make, this is what we want it to feel like, this is what we want it to look like, this is the pace, it's meant to be funny, or it's meant to be emotional, or it's meant to be both, or it's meant to be super fast and there's loads of action, and we need to, you need to just be clarifying, going, it's this, so as much as there's the two columns of, these are the things that it is, these are the things that it isn't. And that people can hear that for the first time and go, oh, okay, I read it as more serious, but actually you're telling me it's very funny, or the other way around. That you'd be amazed how people can read the same thing and have completely different versions. And then obviously, so that's the sort of more abstract version of that. But then you obviously have, okay, how are we going to do this? And what are the obstacles going to be? And
what are the obstacles going to be?
Time and money. That's
wasn't it?
Yeah, to that. Everything is always time and money, and really, once you've set what you want the pathway to be, then it's that next question is then working with everyone to go, do we have the money? Do we have the time?
Yes.
The answer is always no. And then so it's like, how do you then find solutions to that? And in a way, that's the whole process of filmmaking, is you don't have infinite resources. I mean, some shows maybe do nowadays, one or two, but even then, I don't think it doesn't mean they're without problems. That can create problems itself, I think.
Actually,
yeah. So yeah, then it's just, you're breaking it down into, I don't know, you break it down into episodes and then going, right, okay, so we would have a serious tone meeting, and then at the beginning, then we would have episodic tone meetings or block tone meetings. If we're shooting 2 episodes at a time, we'd do a tone meeting for both of those episodes. We would turn the pages and go, okay, scene 5, we're in a house, what does the house look like, how is it lit, all of that kind of stuff. Is it messy, is it tidy, what does it look like from the street, and that applies whether it's a house or whether it's a spaceship or whether there's a monster in there. You're just going, what does this look like, what do we think? So again, it's just one long conversation with all of the heads of department talking about what they think it is, and then the obstacles, how that's going to be problematic or easily achievable, or somewhere in the middle.
And I think for all of us, it's easy to understand that you are the creative leader in this whole process. But of course, you already said it, time and money. Every producer will immediately ask, how involved are you in budget?
Well, you're as involved. I think it varies according to each showrunner. But hopefully you are always involved, and you want to know what the budget is, what it's going to buy you, how many days you have to shoot. Obviously, it makes a big difference on what you're writing, whether you can do certain sequences or not super involved on a day-to-day basis, but I would say on a week-by-week basis, yeah, you want to know, how is the budget looking? How is the schedule looking? Is it, have we got too much material that we can't afford to shoot? So yeah, you're often having a catch up with your producer and line producer to say, how is it feeling? You just want to have those honest conversations. But I'm not there going, okay, there's 4 extras here that we need to get rid of, or, you know, not at this stage. Sometimes it can come down to that, or sometimes in post-production with visual effects shots.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what you're hoping is you're not super involved, but you are aware, because also that's somebody, you hopefully you've got brilliant production team who are dealing with that, line producers and accountants and all of that kind of stuff, and it's being scheduled brilliantly by the first AT, and I mean, generally you're not involved until there's a massive problem, and then you have to go, okay, why is there a massive problem? Is it because, you know, the script is impossible to do, or is it we're not figuring it out properly, or is it, you know? So yeah.
But has it happened that you veto budget decisions?
Not really veto, no, because you're saying, because I think the good thing is, as a writer exec, if I'm being told by my co-exec, a producer and a line producer, or that combination, any one of those, this is what we cannot do,
no, then
I would have to be insane to go, I want us to do this, because they are fiscally responsible for the show. What the conversations can be in those parts. Okay, we can't afford to do this thing. So for me as a writer, I can go, oh, hang on, there's a way we can do that. I can rewrite that to make it cheaper, or I can to make it doable. Tell me the things that, then sometimes you are line by line in the budget going, tell me the bit that makes this expensive. Is it the 2 motorbikes, or is it the fact we're shooting at night, or is it the fact that it's raining? Because I can change those. Or is it the fact that it's got too many visual effects shots in? So I can alter that. So there's that. So your producing can often take the form of rewriting, and you can do that in a way. That's why the showrunner is so valuable.
So, exactly. I was just going to say,
never be scared of writers and showrunners.
I was just going to say it.
Because you can do with a wave of the typewriter, not a typewriter, a laptop. And, you can just go, okay, that now is, we can do that. But the other thing is that some conversations do happen where you go, that sequence is the whole reason we're doing this whole story. It has to stay in. I know that takes us £200,000 over for this episode.
Right.
Okay, for episode 3, let's take £200,000 out of episode 3 and put this into episode 1, because it's the premiere. It needs to look big, and we need to hook people. And I will make sure, I will take responsibility for the fact that the script for episode 3 has to be £200,000 cheaper. So it's
again why it's important to have that person.
Because also I know what's super important in terms of the overall story, instead of just going, well, every episode is its own unit and everything is equal. I know that certain things have certain weight, and certain things can be rewritten in more economic ways.
But as a writer as well, I mean, you must have like a writer brain and producer's brain sometimes fighting against each other, right? Especially maybe in the early phases of writing.
Yeah, I think the first draft is the writer's draft.
Yeah, exactly.
And the first draft has to be the most ambitious. I mean, you don't want to be stupid about it. It has to be, you know vaguely what your budget is going to be. But yeah, that has to be the most ambitious, the most visual, the most expensive, the most kind of wow version of that. And then everything after that is solving the problems you've created with that script, whether they be editorial and creative, or logistical, or production. So yeah, you are constantly in conversation. So really, on a second draft, if the production's up and running, you're having conversations which are, here are the editorial notes, here are the production notes, and sometimes they're the same, but you're having to answer both sets of things. But that is also quite a joyous thing, because then if you have a great director, the director's going, it's all right, I know how to do this sequence in a much either cooler way, or where it's not going to take 3 days, it's going to take 1 day. So that, everything is a conversation. What you have to ensure is that you and everybody on the team is continually open to conversations. You have to remain in open
Yes.
and collaboration. Your
Yes.
your relationship with your producers, your director, that triangle, and well, actually, I would go the square because you include the script team in that. It's really important because all of the problems can be solved within that square. Within those people are the problem solvers. You know.
You actually kind of just answered a question that came in from Thomas Silberman. He asks, I would like to know, how is the relationship with the director, when to leave room for their creativity and freedom, and when to say no and impose your criteria?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one, but it's also, I think it's how you set up your relationship with your director.
Right.
A director may be an executive producer on the project from the start. So again, it's how you establish who has the final say, but also how you then create the relationship. And obviously, sometimes those relationships don't work, but for the most part, you know, they really are super functional and super creative. And I think some of the greatest experiences I've had working on shows has been the joy of working with a director who is improving your script, but is also offering you constantly, you know, better ideas or different ways to do things, or adding to what you've got. And then but also then you're building it together, that you're bouncing off each other, and they make you see things in a different way. You know, I think of what James Strong brought to Broadchurch. I think of directors like Jamie Childs, Jamie Magnus Stone, Netta Laufer, Nina Manzoor, and Doctor Who. They're all, you're always getting something. What you hope for with great directors is you're getting the script that you deliver. They then come and go, now I think it can be this. You know, so it's really important that you're in an alliance, not in opposition to your director. So that's also about how you choose your director, how you work with them, the understanding and the early conversations to go, okay, this is how we're going to work. This is the setup, because, you know, it's not, I think often everybody talks about the problems and the oppositions and all that kind of stuff. The great joys are the collaborations, when you're in a room going, okay, if we all have to solve this problem together, because everybody's working on the show for a common aim, which is to make this show. So then you sit down in a room and you go, okay, it's one little part of this show. So how do we solve that to make it the most exciting, wonderful, beautiful thing? And I think the biggest thing, first of all, and you hear this a lot, but it's really valid, you know, best idea wins, is you cannot be attached to an idea just because it's yours.
No egos.
And no egos. And it's like, and the biggest thing that we talk about a lot, and I really try to do, and I talk about it to the showrunners in the UK we're working with at the moment, is like the show has the ego, not the showrunner.
Right.
And it's really, really important that you know, everybody's in service of the show. The show is this kind of thing there, and the show wants to be the best it can be, and it wants to be the best version of itself. And hopefully you're all agreed on what the thing is that it's trying to be. So
which goes back to your core concept.
Yeah, and if you've got that, then you're serving and servicing that core concept. And so really, you know, whether it's the producer or the showrunner or the director, it's not about the egos there. It's about finding a way to work collaboratively from the start to make a great piece. And that's the joy of filmmaking. You know, that's the whole point. Is otherwise, you know, we can go and be poets and novelists. And, you know, it's like, actually the great thing is working with another person who has a great idea or a better way, or it shows you something about the script or the idea for a sequence or the process. You go, oh yeah, great. You know, you want everybody's great ideas, and hopefully you've set up a working environment in which everybody feels able to say them. And also you're setting up an environment whereby if you are saying, I don't want to go with this, I do want to go with that, that you know, everybody's on that journey with you. You know, it's hard. People don't like having ideas turned down. Nobody does. And sometimes that is your job, but hopefully over time and over the whole of the process, everybody feels like they've made massive contributions.
So conversation, collaboration, no egos,
clarity,
prep work, clarity, and fun, right?
Fun all the time. I mean, it's like nice people. It's like that's what I mean about due diligence. Like, if it will be fun if the people are good and nice, and hardworking and share the same values, and that's really important. And I think you know, from my point of view, you have to lay the rule early on that if somebody is brilliant but difficult, that is a decision you make as to whether you work with them. And I would not work with them, because it's your life, and it's also your working environment and the impact they're going to have on that. And so those are the sort of hiring decisions you also need to make, and you need to, every decision you make has an impact on that.
Very valid point. How involved are you on set?
I personally, I'm not that much.
Not that much. Okay.
No. But again, I think there's really valid reasons why you would be on set all the time. I've never had the budget or time luxury to have the time to be on set while the shooting, because usually there are other episodes, or there are cuts, or there's usually other things to do. And often what it is that certainly in the UK, what's really useful is that the script team will often be on the set or near the set or available to the set if any questions come up. But part of that is also there are two things I would say about that, and I don't really think there's a right or a wrong answer here. I think it's very different according to what show you're doing, how the work, you know, is there lots of improvisation that you're going to need to be there to kind of go, well, yes, that, or no, that, or, you know, or is it very rigid according to the script? You know, shows can work in very different ways.
It's also the collaboration again that you have with your heads of department, with your director, etc. And trust in,
I think so. Trust is a really important word throughout it. My kind of take on it is that if we've done pre-production correctly, and one of the last things we would do in pre-production, if the first thing is a serious tone meeting, the last thing, a few days before the shoot, obviously there's a read-through, but then the very last thing would be a page turn with the director, just me and the director, maybe the director of photography and a producer, just going through line by line the script, and the director talking about how they're going to shoot it, what they think about it, any questions over text, anything like that, how it might cut together, just the kind of, so we've been through the whole script, and any questions they need to ask, they've asked then. Hopefully, if you've done that, then you don't need to be on set as much, because the director can feel free to do those things. And if you've had good communication through pre-production, so that there's that. Not to say if I didn't have all the time in the world and everything was written and there was a gap before we had to do any post-production, future scripts or future series, I wouldn't be on set, because I probably would be a bit more. But
so then you kind of come back in post-production.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I watch the daily, so I watch the rushes, obviously. And that's what I think that for me, I find an advantage to not having been on set, because I can watch the dailies the next day and really see what we have, not what it felt like. And also you don't have the knowledge of, okay, that person wasn't feeling very well, that we were losing the light, that location wasn't quite right, or it was just a difficult day because of the weather. You're not sort of forgiving anything. You're being the first viewer, and you're going, oh, that scene doesn't look like it should. And as we discussed, maybe we need to do that again, or maybe we can figure it out in the edit. And you're constant, and particularly early on, you're then having a conversation with the director going, I love this, more of that. I love the humor you found here. I love the way you've shot that scene. I like the way you're using handheld camera. So let's do a bit more of that. You're constantly, but you're watching it, you know, in front of you, not on the floor, so that you are the first viewer to go, yeah, this is the show starting to come together. And I think you can have I find it a really useful bit of distance. And often those are the most difficult conversations, when you ring up a producer and you go, I don't think we've got that scene, and we need 3 more close-ups, and we don't have them. And I understand why we don't have them, because it was difficult, but we're going to need to figure out a way to get those, or that sequence doesn't make sense, or, you know, we need to think about whether that character's working, you know, all of that stuff. You can be the toughest critic early then.
Yeah. And what about post conversations about final cut? Your position in that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really involved in post-production because I think you know the cut is the final draft of the script. It's when you do any rewriting, obviously ADR, restructuring. Usually in the UK, it's the director would have, you know, that they would have a couple of weeks or up to 4 weeks or whatever, depending on budgets, up to 1 million weeks. If you're working on something super expensive, and then they will deliver their cut, and then then you watch it, and it's a conversation. You give notes, they do another cut. It's just, again, it's an ongoing conversation until you hopefully have the episode or piece where you want it. Yeah, so it ends up being very, very detailed notes, sometimes right near the end, where you're like, oh, maybe 1 second more on that close up, but again, because you're trying to be the first viewer, and you're going,
yes,
and again,
audience goggles, basically.
Yeah, and again, it goes about standards as well. Is that, how precise, some directors like to do, obviously in the American network system, it used to be, and still is in a lot of shows, they get to do a 5-day edit and then that's it, and they're done. So some directors are actually used to working like that and find it odd when you go, okay, when you do your recut or you do the notes, they're like, oh, no, I don't really do that. So I really like that process. I really love working with directors and editors in that. I love working with composer and visual effects, and so yeah, super involved, because in a sense that's where you can be most useful again
as a creative leader again. Yes.
Yeah, because it's like another shoot. Really, you've got all your postings who haven't been there during the shoot, most of them, and you're now going, right, now we corral this section of the process with the VFX providers, with the editors, with the composer, colorist, everything, sound mixers. They're really important.
And they all need to know that it's a terrible thing.
It's all saying the same thing. Yeah. Because then when you watch it at the end, you're like, and they go, oh yeah, it's that thing we talked about.
Can you believe that it's only 8 minutes left?
Oh my God. Yeah, I can.
Saying that was going to go fast. So I have 2 more questions from, well, actually 3. Another one just came in. But before that, there's something really important for me, I think for everyone, and that is your view. You already touched upon it, your view on pushing diversity, equality, inclusion as a showrunner. Like, what are the opportunities for showrunners to really
it's everything, isn't it, as a showrunner, because you are the gatekeeper, and you hold the keys to the door. So it's obviously super important in terms of who you choose to work with. Really, your policy, your creative vision for a show is about who you work with, and hopefully you're giving opportunities to people that really are as diverse, and the roles you're putting them in are as inclusive as possible in terms of listening to what they're saying, making sure those contributions are key, and that they're in key decision-making roles. As a showrunner, it's all our responsibility to really make up for the historical lack of progress. Really, is that the industry is behind the curve on this, and what you want to do is bring people in so that they can do the jobs, or be trained to do the jobs, or it's so you have to be super mindful of that all the time, so that showrunners in the end don't all look like me.
Look like you.
Yeah.
That's where training programs come in as well, right? That's where training, education, all of that comes in, because there is no actual.
Well, there's no way to do it, and it's demystifying it, because it's like and also not every writer will want to be a showrunner, but for those who do, you want to feel that the job is relatively simple in what you're doing, but it's like the quantity and the pathways that you choose are the key decisions. So it's you can sort of never do enough as a showrunner is the answer to that. So you need to do as much as you can.
Need to do more. Well, you gave us the first female Doctor Who, so that's one thing at least. I'm curious to see what you're going to do next. Okay, we have 6 minutes for a few questions. The first one, from someone who wants to remain anonymous, is how many non-native English speaker writers, script editors, or executives do you have in your team /writers room?
Not in the UK, non-native English speakers.
Yeah.
No, we haven't had any so far, but that's not to say that couldn't.
But non-native means that they can still speak English, right? They're just
yeah. No, and we're working. My company's working with with writers from other countries and Wales, and we want to do more of that. So that's not necessarily a barrier on every show. It often depends on the show you're doing and the company that you're working for, and there's all kinds of. So that's quite a difficult one to answer in general, really.
But it's not a barrier.
Not a barrier, no. No. Great writing is if you can write a great script and it's in
English,
then that's great.
Fantastic. Then Ruth Remit wants to know, do you have specific questions you put to people to find out if they fit to your vision or your project and your working style?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. Well done, Ruth.
Yeah, I think the answer is no. I think you want to be having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee with somebody and really thinking, do I want to be spending the next 9 months of my life with this person? Do I want to be standing at 2 a.m. in a field where it's raining next to this person where everything is going wrong and we have 10 minutes to get everything done? Will I be happy thinking but I like this person and also they want it still to be as brilliant as I want it to be? And I think a lot of that is gut instinct and slowly figuring it out. So I think it's like spend half an hour with that person, just figuring out who they are as a person, really, because who people are as human beings is kind of what they bring to their work. So no, it's a really difficult one. Yeah.
But I also don't think this is or at least for me, this is not specific to a showrunner's approach. No. This is something that in our industry as a whole, we want to work with people that we trust, that we can rely on, that we indeed can be in the rain with at 2 a.m.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say the first thing I do would be like, what have you just done? Yeah. How was that? Talk to me about the process. What was it? Were you happy with it? All of that. You break the ice and then hopefully you're talking about the project you're doing with the script and going, what did you think of it? How would this work? All of that kind of stuff. So.
Then we have a question that is a little bit long, so we'll see what we can do.
A short answer.
Yeah, exactly. Hi, it's an anonymous attendee, as Zoom says. Hi, what are the usual development and production budgets for different episode lengths and genres? Let's say 30-minute comedy, 30-minute drama, 60-minute science fiction, etc. But then they also want to know in the UK and in the US and streamers versus broadcasters.
I would suggest Google is your friend there. Yeah, I can't answer that for you. It's so varied now, depending on which country.
Definitely.
And it's changing every week. So yeah.
I mean, when I am in the room with a lot of people from different European countries, from the US, from UK, etc., we always do this as a fun question. What is your indeed average budget per episodes? And you'll be amazed by the diversity of answers that you get. So sorry about that.
Sorry.
But this can be interesting, though. How long are the development periods and how many shooting days for various lengths? What was it for Broadchurch?
For Broadchurch, I think, the development period, I'd written the pilot, but I'd written it on spec. And then I'd taken it to the broadcaster because I had a relationship with them, who then paired us up with the production company. But then they said, I think it was in January 2012, and they said, can you have it on air in March 2013? So we only had one script at that point and a Bible for I think we wanted 13 episodes at that point. And so the development process was, yes, of course we can do that if you've been supposed to go on that, and then you figure it out. So it can really vary. I mean, a development process can be anything up to 2 or 3 years, or it can be 6 weeks. It really varies. So that's not a very useful answer.
No. But I mean, it's a concrete answer. But I guess you got a lot more time for the second season.
Yeah, not that much more. Well, because then people want it back quickly as well. And if you're writing it all yourself, or even if you're writing it with the team, you've got to do that. So it's always hard, but that's a high class problem when, if you've got a production date to hit. I can't remember how many days we did on Broadchurch. It was somewhere between, I want to say it was sort of between 12 and 15 an episode for about 45, 50 minutes. And I think on Doctor Who we were doing maybe 15, 16 an episode. Again, it's a function of your budget, basically. Exactly. The more budget you have, the more days, the less minutes you have to film per day. So yeah.
Well, I mean, you talked about time and money, so this person definitely wanted to hear a bit more about the main obstacles, time and money.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're running out of time, unfortunately. I'm going to go a little bit over time and ask you one closing statement.
Yeah.
What would your advice be for the aspiring showrunners that are in our audience today?
I think if you are, I think if you're not producing already, or then it's try and be on. If you're just writing an episode of something, for example, try and be on a shoot. Try and ask if you can go and sit in the back of an edit. If you can be in any pre-production meetings, where they're doing planning, try and learn to understand a schedule, what that means, how a schedule is put together. Like if you make friends with producers and assistant producers and first assistant directors and just go, oh, can you tell me a bit more about that? Costume people, designers, it's like the more that you can just go and go, can I just sit at the back and watch what happens? Or can I hang out with you for a day? Then I think you will begin to understand, and same with directors, just go because they can come and hang out for a week on set.
Yeah.
The more you understand what other people's jobs are, the more you'll start to see what questions they are asking of executive producers or directors or producers. And those are the questions that come at you. In a sense, showrunning is really just having answers for questions.
I would say in an ideal world, a production company or producer would kind of give you this traineeship.
I agree. I mean, the biggest thing in the whole industry could do, if I could change anything, it would be there would be apprentice showrunnerships on every show, but within companies across multiple shows that you could go and see across a year. You'd see 3 or 4. We need to start building the industrial system and base for that, and it's not expensive, and you wouldn't in no other business would you put somebody with no experience in charge of a $30 million operation and go, please now make this product and give it back to us in 9 months. We know you've never done this before. So
showrunner apprenticeships, that's what we need. But we talked about this already in previous think tanks, actually. So if there's any funds or out there,
all the companies, just everyone, and it's great that Netflix support this scheme. Everybody, if they put their heads together and did it, it would be a really easy thing to implement. But there has to be the kind of pan industry and kind of pan continental desire to do that.
Yeah. Well, the only thing we can do in these think tanks is just keep on saying it and hopefully sharing information and inspire the industry with experiences and stories. And thank you so much for being so generous with sharing your experience today.
My pleasure. Thank you for moderating it. Brilliant.
Thanks. So yeah, a few closing words. This was again part of the Showrunner think tank of the European Showrunner Programme. There will be a next think tank, and that will happen during Serienkamp in Cologne. And I'm gutted that I can't be there this year. I will really try to be there next year. That will take place on site, much better than online, of course. And this session has been recorded. All the other think tanks you are also able to watch online. For more info, you can visit showrunners with an S, showrunners.eu. All right, everyone, thank you so much for being with us. And Chris, again, thank you.
Thank you.